My name is Emily Carter, and I'm 36 years old. 3 months ago, I stood beside a freshly dug grave while the last pieces of the life I thought I understood quietly fell apart. The strange thing is, the moment my relationship ended didn't involve shouting. There was no dramatic confrontation, no plates thrown across a room, just a single text message, and the sound of dirt hitting my father's coffin. The funeral director had just finished speaking when the men beside the grave began lowering the casket. The sky above us was gray, the kind of heavy, quiet gray that makes the whole world feel suspended in slow motion. My mother clung to my arm. Her fingers trembled against the sleeve of my black coat. She had been crying almost non-stop since the hospital called 3 days earlier. 3 days. That's all the time we had between my father's sudden heart attack and this moment where he was disappearing into the ground. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, trying to hold both of us together. "Mom," I whispered gently, "I've got you." She nodded weakly, pressing her face into my shoulder. The sound of the lowering straps creaked softly. Then my phone vibrated. At first, I ignored it. Funerals have a way of shrinking the world into a single moment. Everything else, emails, notifications, obligations, becomes meaningless. But the vibration came again. I glanced down. The message was from Daniel Rhodes, my boyfriend of 4 years. Daniel had left the funeral about an hour earlier. He said he had a sudden work emergency. At the time, I believed him. My thumb hesitated before opening the message. Then I read it. Still at that depressing thing. Stop being so dramatic. He was old anyway. Coming home late. Going clubbing with the guys. You really need to stop moping. It's been 3 days. For a moment, my brain simply stopped. I stared at the screen while the world around me blurred. The coffin was halfway down into the ground. My father's coffin. And my boyfriend was complaining that I was being dramatic. My mother noticed my expression immediately. "Honey," she asked softly, "what's wrong?" I locked my phone and forced my face into something neutral. "Nothing," I said quickly. "Just work stuff." She nodded slowly, too exhausted to question it further. But inside my chest, something had gone completely cold. This wasn't the first time Daniel had shown a breathtaking lack of empathy. Looking back, there had been dozens of moments. The time he complained about attending my grandmother's funeral because it interfered with a spa appointment. The time he told me I was overreacting when my dog died. The time he rolled his eyes while my mother cried during a hospital visit. Each moment had chipped away at something inside me. But this crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. My fingers moved across the screen slowly. I typed one word: enjoy. Then I slipped my phone back into my purse and watched the rest of my father's burial in silence. Something inside me had already made a decision that had been quietly building for months. When the ceremony ended, relatives began drifting toward the reception hall. People hugged me, offered condolences. My aunt squeezed my hands and whispered something about how proud my father had always been of me. I thanked them all politely, but my mind was already somewhere else. My cousin Pete Lawson approached as the crowd thinned. Pete was 39, broad-shouldered, and permanently smelled faintly of sawdust and engine oil. He owned a small moving company in town. "Hey, Em," he said gently. "You holding up okay?" I pulled him aside near the parking lot. "Pete," I said quietly, "I need your truck." He frowned. "Right now?" "Yes." He studied my face carefully. "What's going on?" I handed him my phone and showed him Daniel's message. Pete read it once. Then again, the muscles in his jaw tightened. "You're kidding me." "I wish I was." He handed the phone back slowly. "So, what do you need?" "Everything that belongs to me out of the apartment," I said calmly. "Today." Pete blinked. "You serious?" "Completely." He didn't hesitate. "The guys were supposed to have the day off because of the funeral," he said, already pulling out his phone. "But they'll want the hours." Within minutes, he had 4 movers on standby. Meanwhile, I stepped aside and called Jerome Walker, my brother-in-law. Jerome was a lawyer. "Jerome," I said when he answered, "I need separation papers drafted today." He paused. "That serious? I'll send you the text." A moment later, I heard him inhale sharply. "Oh, wow. Yeah. Give me 2 hours," he said. "I'll have something ready." By 2 p.m., Pete's truck was parked outside my apartment building. The same apartment Daniel and I had lived in for 3 years. The same apartment that, technically speaking, had always been mine. I signed the lease 2 years before Daniel moved in. Almost every piece of furniture inside had been purchased by me long before we met. But Daniel had never paid attention to details like that. Pete's crew moved with professional precision. My grandmother's dining table, the living room set I bought with my first promotion bonus, my entire home office, desk, computer, monitors, bookshelves, kitchen appliances, the television, my vinyl collection, every tool, every appliance, even the good towels. Within 3 hours, the apartment looked almost hollow. What remained was minimal. Daniel's clothes, his gaming console, the ugly couch his mother gave us, his microwave, his protein shaker, a folding chair from the garage. Pete stood in the doorway, surveying the empty living room. Cold, he muttered. I shook my head. No. I pulled a printed screenshot from my purse. Daniel's funeral text. I think this is actually pretty generous. By 4 p.m., Jerome emailed me the separation papers. I placed them carefully on the bedroom floor where the bed used to be. On top of the papers, I left the screenshot of Daniel's message and a short note. I spent the evening handling my father's affairs. Your belongings are in the corner. Utilities end tomorrow. You have 30 days to move. Please communicate only through lawyers. Then I closed the door behind me. Pete locked the new door handle. And just like that, my relationship ended while Daniel was still dancing in a nightclub somewhere across the city. That night, I went to my mother's house. We sat at the kitchen table flipping through old photo albums of my father. And for the first time in 3 days, I cried like a normal daughter grieving her dad, not like a woman trapped in a relationship with someone who couldn't even respect a funeral. The next morning, my phone began exploding with messages. Daniel had finally come home. It had been 48 hours since my father's funeral, when Daniel finally walked back into the consequences of his own behavior. Technically, I didn't see it happen, but my Ring doorbell camera did. Even after I moved out, the system still sent notifications to my phone. Around 4:17 a.m., while I was half asleep on my mother's couch, the alert buzzed softly beside me. I opened the video, and there he was, Daniel Rhodes. Stumbling up the front steps of the apartment building like someone who had consumed far too many tequila shots. His shirt was untucked. His hair was messy. He tried his key once, then again, then a third time, each attempt slower than the last. Finally, he stepped back and stared at the door with a confused expression, like the lock had personally betrayed him. Then he noticed the small lockbox I had attached to the railing. Jerome insisted I had to provide him with access to the apartment for 30 days, since he technically lived there too. Daniel opened the box, pulled out the new key, unlocked the door. The next sound in the recording was spectacular. A scream. Not just surprise. Not confusion, pure existential horror. Apparently, discovering your apartment has been transformed into a minimalist art installation at 4 a.m. can be quite upsetting. The neighbors definitely thought so. Within 10 minutes, the downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, had called the police, thinking someone was being murdered. I didn't respond to any messages that night, but when I woke up at 6 a.m., my phone looked like it had survived a digital earthquake. 67 unread texts. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and began reading them. The evolution of Daniel's emotional state was fascinating. The first stage was confusion. WTF. Emily, where is everything? Is this a joke? Then came anger. This isn't funny. Bring my stuff back right now. Then panic. You can't do this. I'm calling the police. Then bargaining. Please answer me. We can talk about whatever this is. Finally, the threats. You're being abusive. I'll destroy you in court. I forwarded the entire thread to Jerome. 5 minutes later, he called me. He was laughing. Emily, he said, barely containing himself. He can't destroy anything. Oh? Short relationship, no children, both financially independent, and he earns more than you do. Judges love that combination. So I'm fine? You're more than fine, Jerome said, especially considering that text he sent during your father's funeral. I leaned back in my chair. For the first time in days, I felt something dangerously close to calm. But Daniel wasn't done. The flying monkeys arrived next. First was his mother, Deborah Rhodes. She called me mid-morning. "How could you do this to my son?" she demanded the moment I answered. "Do what exactly?" I asked calmly. "You left him with nothing." "He has his belongings," I said, "and a folding chair." "You stole everything." "I removed the property that legally belongs to me." "You're punishing him while he's grieving." I stared at the phone in disbelief. "Which club was he grieving at Thursday night?" I asked. "Tequila Sunrise or Club Paradise?" There was a long pause. Then she hung up. Next came Daniel's best friend, Astrid. Her message was less angry, but somehow more irritating. "Emily, you need therapy. This is psychotic behavior," I replied with a screenshot. Daniel's funeral text. A few seconds later, she wrote back, "He didn't mean it like that." I typed slowly. "How exactly do you mean he was old anyway, during someone's burial?" Another pause. Then she sent, "Okay, when you say it like that, it sounds bad." "It is bad," I replied. Then I blocked her. Meanwhile, Daniel's life was quietly imploding in another direction. See, when he left the funeral early, he told his boss he needed 3 days off for a family emergency. He even received bereavement leave because my father had been like family to him. But Daniel had one small problem. He documented his entire clubbing adventure on Instagram. Shots. Dancing on tables. Making out with a random woman. The caption? "Living my best life. Freedom Friday." Unfortunately for him, one of his coworkers, Heather, followed his account. Heather had been the one covering his workload, while he supposedly mourned. Heather had also missed her anniversary dinner because she stayed late finishing Daniel's presentation. So Heather took screenshots, lots of screenshots. Then she emailed them to their boss with the subject line, "Daniel's family emergency, Thursday night." Daniel wasn't fired, but he did receive a formal disciplinary warning, and he lost his quarterly performance bonus. About $5,000, which apparently triggered another wave of rage texts. "You ruined my bonus. You did this." I didn't respond. I simply forwarded everything to Jerome. A week later, Daniel attempted his next brilliant strategy. He tried to break back into the apartment. I came home from work one evening and found the front door partially splintered, and Daniel standing inside the living room, holding my grandmother's china cabinet. "Emily," he said nervously, "this is still my apartment for 18 more days. And breaking the door is still illegal," I replied. "You can't prove anything." I held up my phone. "Ring camera." He froze. "You recorded me? The police are already on their way." Daniel ran. Actually ran. He left the crowbar behind. The police arrived 10 minutes later. Technically, he still had legal residence in the apartment, which complicated things. But the property damage was still documented. That incident alone probably would have been enough drama. But Daniel wasn't finished destroying his own life. Not even close. Because the next thing he did was so incredibly stupid. It actually got him arrested. And that's when everything really started falling apart. Daniel's next mistake began with greed, and it ended with handcuffs. At the time, my father had been gone barely 2 weeks. Most of his belongings were still in my mother's garage while we slowly sorted through everything. Tools, old baseball gloves, boxes of photographs, decades of a life lived quietly and honestly. My dad had been a practical man. He fixed everything himself. So his garage looked like a museum of tools collected over 40 years. Some of them were vintage pieces passed down from his father, worth real money, but far more valuable to me emotionally. I had moved them to my mom's garage after the funeral because I didn't want them sitting around the apartment. Apparently, that decision saved them, because Daniel knew exactly where the spare key to my mom's garage was hidden. One afternoon, my uncle called me. "Emily," he said slowly, "why is Daniel selling your father's tools on Facebook Marketplace?" My stomach dropped. "What?" "He posted the entire set," my uncle continued. "Drills, saws, toolboxes, everything." I opened the listing. There it was. Garage tool collection, $1,500 OBO. The photos were unmistakable. My father's workbench, my father's tools, 2 weeks after his death. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to my mom's house. This time I didn't go alone. I called the police on the way. When I arrived, Daniel was standing in the garage negotiating with a buyer, a middle-aged guy with a pickup truck. "I'll give you $1,200, the buyer said. "That's a deal," Daniel replied. I stepped forward. "Actually," I said calmly, "those items are stolen property." Both men turned. Daniel's face drained of color. "Emily." I held up a folder. "Here's my father's will stating the tools were left to me." I showed the buyer the paperwork. "And here's the death certificate from 2 weeks ago." The buyer didn't say another word. He got into his truck and drove away immediately. Daniel tried to laugh. "I thought they were communal property," he said nervously. One of the officers stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said to Daniel, "you're attempting to sell property belonging to an estate still in probate." "I'm her partner," Daniel argued. "Half of it is mine." "Ex-partner," I corrected. "And inheritance is not shared property." The officer nodded. "Sir, turn around." Daniel was actually arrested. Handcuffs. Police car. Neighbors watching from across the street. It would have been surreal if it wasn't so pathetic. The charges were eventually dropped. Jerome negotiated that part, but only in exchange for Daniel signing the separation agreement immediately. His employer still found out about the arrest. Another disciplinary strike. Daniel was now one step away from being fired. Meanwhile, his financial situation was collapsing. Our apartment rent had been $2,200 a month. Daniel earned a good salary, but he also had expensive habits. Designer sneakers. Weekend bar tabs, constant online shopping. Without me splitting expenses, he couldn't afford the place. So he moved back in with his mother. Deborah had rules, strict ones. No overnight guests, no drinking, church every Sunday, and $600 rent. Daniel lasted exactly one Sunday before sneaking out of church during the sermon to smoke weed in the parking lot. The pastor called Deborah personally. That conversation apparently did not go well. Meanwhile, something else was happening quietly in the background. My mother. You see, my mom had lived in our neighborhood for 40 years. She knew everyone. Hairdressers, shop owners, neighbors. And she made sure people knew exactly what Daniel had texted me during my father's funeral. Grief can make people surprisingly efficient. The local salon suddenly had no openings when Daniel needed a haircut for a work event. The grocery stores seemed to run out of his favorite wine. His gym membership started experiencing mysterious technical issues. Petty? Maybe. But my father had coached Little League for 20 years. He was beloved in that community. Daniel's behavior didn't just disrespect me, it insulted my father's memory. And then Daniel made his final catastrophic mistake. He created a fake dating profile using my identity, my photos, my name, my workplace. But the bio said, recently separated, looking for someone to support me financially. No overweight people. Daddy just died, so I'm emotionally unstable. A coworker's wife saw it. She showed her husband. He showed me. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Jerome didn't hesitate. "We're filing a police report," he said, "and a civil lawsuit." Daniel's lawyer tried to claim it was satire. The judge didn't find it funny, especially when we presented messages Daniel had sent pretending to be me. Things like, "I have herpes, but my partner doesn't know. Want to be my secret boyfriend?" The court ordered Daniel to pay $10,000 in damages, money he absolutely did not have. 2 months after my father's funeral, the separation was finalized. Here's where Daniel lost his job. The fake profile incident was the final straw. He now working part-time at a call center. His wages are being garnished to repay the damages. His new girlfriend dumped him after Googling his arrest record. He started a social media page claiming to be a survivor of emotional abuse. It has 3 followers. Meanwhile, my life became surprisingly peaceful. I moved into a small 1-bedroom apartment closer to my mom. I started therapy. Grief counseling helped more than I expected. I even received a promotion at work. Turns out, removing constant stress from your life can do wonders for productivity. And that's where I met Michael, a kind, patient man who who had also lost a parent recently. He understood silence, understood grief, understood respect, something Daniel never did. My mom and I now have dinner every Sunday. We even started a memorial scholarship in my father's name. Every year, our family hosts a baseball game in his honor. Last I heard, Daniel actually tried to show up at the most recent one. The entire team formed a human wall in front of the field entrance. My uncle gave a speech about respecting the departed while staring directly at Daniel. He left 10 minutes later, crying. Do I feel bad? No. Daniel texted. He was old anyway, while my father was being lowered into the ground. While my family mourned, he went clubbing. While we sorted through memories, he tried to sell my father's tools. All I did was take my furniture, leave papers where his pillow used to be. Everything else, that was just Daniel, finally facing the consequences of the person he chose to be. My father always used to say, when someone shows you who they are the first time, believe them. I should have believed Daniel years earlier, but sometimes clarity arrives late. Still, better late than never.